Welcome back. In this lecture, we are going to see the program correctness part 2, in which we will see how the program correctness can be achieved in modern programming languages such as object-oriented languages, and also we will see one more miscellaneous concept called lambda calculus. However, this lambda calculus is a very big topic. So I am not going in detail of the lambda calculus. However, I am precisely giving the important points or important concepts available in the lambda calculus. The program correctness sometimes is also called program verification in some textbooks. So this program verification means in software engineering you might have studied verification and validation. Verification is nothing but are we building the right product, where in the case of validation means are we build the product right. This way of checking is said to be verification and validation. Before moving on to the one stage to other stage in software development, that is from analysis to design, design to coding, coding to testing, testing to deployment or maintenance. So in these stages, while moving from one stage to other stage, this V and V, that is verification and validation steps, are mandatory steps to cross check whether we are building the right product or not. So validation will be done always with the specifications, and verifications will be done according to the product that already we have built. So well, in the last lecture we have seen the axiomatic semantics, in which how to put the inference rules and how to place the preconditions and post conditions. Then how to check the program segment. If the program segment is complex, then it will be decomposed into subprograms. Then these subprograms will be executed in sequence, thereby checking the partial correctness of the program. So we have seen one example per category for one conditional state using conditional statements and looping constructs. For the looping constructs, we have seen the loop invariants concept. Now in this lecture we are going for this formal method tools, that is JML, Java modeling language. Next is how to check the correctness of the object-oriented programs and correctness of the functional programs. Before moving on to the next concepts, I would like to give you some more information about the last lecture, in which we have seen the inference rule preparation for the given program. So you may go to the Colorado State University website. Anyhow, this link was provided in the tutorial in the lectures session. So you can go to this and you will find this tutorial 5 program verification, in which many examples were given. For example, a simple example of checking one or two statements with pre and post condition, and checking of the functions, then checking of the recursive functions. So like that, so many questions were given here. So you may go through these questions, and also material related to this was provided here, related to the program correctness, with each example explained in detail. So there exist several examples, example 1 and example 2. In detail they have explained where to split the program and how to make it as a subprogram 1, subprogram 2, etc. So these links were provided in the lecture material. You can go through these materials. Now we will come to the today's lecture, that is formal methods tools, that is JML. In the previous lecture, what are the formal methods that we have seen are mostly complex in nature. Programmer has to spend a lot of time in writing those inferences. Hence, for the to suit the modern languages, these formal language methods or formal method tools have been developed. In this, Java modeling language is one which has received good attention for the Java applications, and this Java JML not only provides the formal method but also provides the exception handling mechanism. We know this object-oriented systems focus on the classes and objects. So that means methods and messages are the subordinate. Okay, that means the message, that is, objects will communicate via messages. So here the state of a system is the set of all active objects and their values at any moment of runtime of the program. So formal specification P and Q. The P means initial condition and Q is the final condition, are therefore logical expressions about the object's status or object state, whether object is about to create, object is going to be accessed or not, or created, accessed and destroyed or not. So the tool for the formal specification of the object-oriented languages are specifications, especially is modeled via Java modeling language JML, and design will be done using unified modeling language and JML. Coding will be done using Java programming and JML. Verification again will be done using JML and Java. Then in object orientation, how these specifications are mentioned. If you are using the specification at the method level, then you use pre and post conditions, loop invariants and conditional statements. If you are using at class level, then class invariants to be used. If it is at the system level, then intra-class invariants to be used, which means system state to be modeled there. So when this particular thing will be done, that is in object-oriented design process. So specification and design phase. So write specifications for all classes and methods using UML or JML. So people usually neglect this UML topic, but UML design plays a major role in the project development, especially projects that involves object-oriented programming languages. The reason is design process usually takes 60 to 70% of the project development. If the design is perfect and good and can be in a position to scale to accommodate new modules, obviously the project can also be very flexible and reliable. So while going for the specification and the design phase, write specification for all classes and methods using UML, and in case of coding phase, you use the UML and decode it into the corresponding language code, either Java or something. So here Java is considered as the core programming language, and this Java is a imperative programming language or imperative paradigm. In the case of verification phase, prove that specification and code are equivalent. So you are supposed to mention that this specification and the code that you have developed are equivalent. So this specification is generally functional requirement that you write here. So the functional requirement was satisfied, whatever the functional requirements that are designed are satisfied with the developed code or not. Usually in software development process, this will be done in two ways. Once the code has been developed by the programmer, expert programmer or the senior managers will perform two aspects. One is code inspection, another is code walkthrough. Code inspection means there will be set of rules or there exists a checklist. They will carry that checklist and they will inspect according to the checklist in the developed code. But in case of code walkthrough is one that an expert coder or a senior manager will sit and will go through the structuring of the program and flow, how logically you have written, these kind of aspects. So especially this verification phase. If you can also do this verification phase internally by including the JML, or by the experts with the help of some specification checklist. So that checklist will be used for verifying whether the prepared technical specification or the functional requirements was completely included in the given code or not, or developed code or not. So here JML is a language for writing specifications in Java. So it is a binded specification thing to the particular language called Java. In this preconditions, postconditions, loop invariants, and class invariants. These are the 4 categories available for mentioning the specifications in Java language. So the JML specifications are special comments in Java program. That is here. If you want to mention the specification in one line, then single line comment and @ If you want to mention it in multiple lines, then multi-line comment with @ starting and @ ending. So basically this is also used as a Java documentation. In Java documentation also this kind of rules and regulations exist. Especially Java documentation is to prepare the document for your program. Usually this documentation will be created via Java doc, and here in JML compiler will be there, which will compile this particular specification, special comments, and it will convert into it will check for the JML specification. So for the JML compiler, there is a command called JMLC. Once you install the JML compiler, you will use JMLC to compile the program. Using JML, the Hore triple will be written like this. Multi-line comment. Within the multi-line comment, requires P, which is the precondition, ensures Q, which is the post condition, and multi-line comment close, and @ multi-line comment close, type, method, parameters, local variables, and this program segments, that is subprograms like S1, S2, S3. Because if there exists a complex subprogram, then it should be divided into smaller subprograms, and these subprograms will be executed in sequence. So P, S1, S2, and so on, Sn, Q is written in JML or Java as P and Q are Java Boolean expressions. That means preconditions and postcondition are the Java Boolean expressions. That means they will return either true or false. They may use parameters, or that means variables, the parameters that are used may be used here. Next is locals and class variables as arguments. So that means this is the property of the P and Q values that can be included in the JML specification. So when you use JML language, then you need to remember these expressions. Require P means P is a precondition for call. Ensure P means P is a post condition for the call. Signal of E and P, that means E means exception. When exception E is raised by the call, P is a post condition. Loop invariant P means P is a loop invariant. Invariant P means P is a class invariant. Slash result is equal to E means E is the result written by the call. Like that, these are the standard expressions that are to be used while mentioning the JML specification in the programming. Here is a simple factorial program written with precondition, postcondition, and a loop invariant. Here the precondition is the inserted or the passed n value should be greater than or equal to 1, because the factorial can be calculated for the elements which are greater than 1. However, 0 factorial is equal to 1, but we are starting from 1 as the input. In this particular factorial program will run based upon the loop that was written in the program. So that reason we have to use loop invariant values, and post variant is the result that is written by the function as n factorial. Now the same program, by using JML, how can we rewrite this? In the multi-line comment, @requires 1 less than or equal to n. This is p value. The p value means post condition. Next, p value means precondition. Q means post condition. What is the post condition? Previously we have seen that is factorial. Factorial means all the n values. From the n value to 1 should be multiplied. That is n into n minus 1 into like that. So that is reason here it ensures the result is equal to product integer I from whatever the I value is there. From I is equal to 1 to I less than or equal to n, this product is going on, and the resultant product will be returned to the result. This is what is called Q. And loop invariant, here within the multi-line comment, loop underscore invariant, this is the default expression. How long this particular loop has to run, that is I less than or equal to n, and f is equal to product int I, that is same condition that what we have used here to be used here, and j. So this is the way how the JML encoding will be done while writing the Java program for precondition and post condition. The main reason behind this JML specification is to avoid difficulties in the testing, because once if you write the program very well with proper specifications and at the beginning itself, then you can avoid majority of the testing process that we'll do after the coding stage. So this is what the main intention. At the same time, the program looks clear, and the code inspection and code walkthroughs can also become easy. So to do this, various JML software tools are available. So compiling JML JML code, use JMLC instead of Java compiler. It does syntactic and type checking will be done by this JMLC, and the bytecode generation for all JML assertions and Java code will be done by the JMLC, and static checking will be done, and runtime assertion checking will be done by using JML RAC instead of Java. So checks precondition P at the entry to every call, checks the post condition Q, checks the loop invariants, issues Java exception if anything was gone wrong. So this is not a formal verification. It is just like checking the specification that you have written in the Java code. And also there exist some proof assistance tools, because you have to prove that whatever you have written is according to the specification. To do that, Daikon and Loop are the two tools available for the proof assistance. Please remember, if this is pertaining to the Java applications only, that is for Java application checking. Like that, for program correctness methods for C, C++ are different, and for Java it is different, for Python it is different. Okay, from language to language it will vary. But whatever the language, imperative languages that you take, for all these imperative languages, same kind of procedures you will follow. We all know a most powerful open source IDE called Eclipse. You can also include this JML along with the Eclipse, so that while typing the code, automatically this specification snippets can be directly included in the Java code that you are writing. So the same factorial program, we'll try some test with our this example. Public class my factorial class. Within comments, you write the precondition, post condition, and loop invariant. and compile the program like jmlc hyphen capital Q my factorial.java. Then it will compile it. So how to run this? JML RAC for Java running my factorial 3. This is command and argument that we are passing here. 3 means 3 factorial. Factorial of 3 is equal to 6. Whenever you say JML RAC my factorial minus 5, so we cannot compute factorial for minus 5. So the reason it's a abnormal run. So thereby it will throw JML exception. So abnormal exceptions are the abnormal conditions or abnormal things that arises during the execution of the program. So exceptions in thread main. This is org.jml specification.jmlrac runtime JML entry point precondition error, because we have given the precondition as the positive value, because the value what we are supplying is greater than or equal to 1 or not, that we are going to check. So there is an entry condition was failed here. So this is the way how it will return the exception once you have given the wrong input. So what are the other JML exceptions available? These are the other JML exceptions are available. JML entry precondition error, JML entry post condition error, JML entry exception post condition error, JML loop invariant errors, and JML variant errors. See, all these exceptions errors are the subclasses of the throwable class. So exception is the superclass of all exceptions in Java. So for this also exception is the superclass. Now in the same program, let will change from while I less than n to while I less than or equal to n. So the n factor will be computed incorrectly because you have mentioned it as I less than or equal to n. So whenever you say JML RAC my factorial 3, then it will raise an exception called JML loop invariant exception or invariant error, because the invariant value is not satisfied that was mentioned in the JML specification. So this is the way how JML helps the programmer to immediately identify the mistake what they have done and correct the program there itself. But beware, JML is not a generic thing to do all kind of checkings. JML RAC does not trap all errors. Here are two abnormal runs. For example, JML RAC my factorial 21. This is a wrong answer, but no JML messages. It is giving you negative value. The reason is it is going out of the integer range, so that you are getting the negative value here. So recall, Java has no arithmetic overflow exception, but a factorial of n for n greater than or equal to 12 should give the result which is greater than 2 power 31 minus 1, but it is not possible for Java integer values. That is reason it is going into the garbage value. The output is going into the garbage value. So note, JML RAC computes the same wrong result when it checks the post condition as the factorial method computes. So this error goes undetected. So that means here also you should be beware of whether the specification, even after writing the specification, you still there are still chances that you will find the errors. For this, better thing is during the design process itself, you have to decide upon what type of data type must be included in the variable. So that will avoid this kind of situation. If you might have used some other than integer, if you might have used some other long variables or long data types, then this problem for 21, 32 you can avoid, but still it is possible if the higher values are supplied. So you must take care of these kind of aspects when you are writing the programs. So how this exception handling will be done in JML? Signals of exception expression So that means here in this is the line signals of exception. What are the exception you want to signal? Signal it for the expression that for which you want to signal it. So JML executes this, and once the main code was written, here throw new exception. Whatever the exception you want to throw here, then you can, this particular exception will be thrown. Whenever this happen, means this particular sequence is executed. So this JML exceptions are two possibilities are there. Here expression is true, and normal Java exception handling proceeds. If expression is false, and JML exceptional post condition error is raised. Based upon the expression that was mentioned here, if the expression is true, then normal Java exception will take care of if anything was gone wrong. If the expression what we have written is false, then this JML exceptional post condition error will be raised. So we have seen previously that factorial cannot be computed for the value which is greater than 12. So here a thing was included, signals of arithmetic exception when the expression is n value is greater than 12. So thereby, whenever the factorial 22 was called, so which one will be raised here? Java.lang.arithmetic exception. Normal Java exception handling is going to take place. So this is the way how JML exceptions will work. Some other points you need to remember for the JML while using JML are, we can sometimes avoid a signal caused by the straightening the precondition. For example, requires 1 less than or equal to n and n less than or equal to 13. N less than 13. So instead of providing the signal there, signal arithmetic exception n greater than 12 like that. So here in the condition itself we are including it. Next is specifications are always declarative. They never affect the state of the program. Next is runtime assertion checking is not proof, but it provides a rigorous framework for testing. JML allows formal methods and Java programs to be integrated. So that reason you have to use either JML-C for compiling the Java program, JML-RAC to run the program. There are lot more to JML, in particular class level specifications, tools for static checking, tools for providing correctness. So these are the various other tools. We are not going in deep of that, but the essence of this lecture is to give you the gist of JML, how the Java modeling language will be used, and also there exists to perform unit testing. There exists a tool called JUnit, which will perform Java unit testing. That also people are the Java developers will use that vigorously along with JML in some Java based projects. Next we will move on to the lambda calculus. This lambda calculus was introduced in 1930s by Church as a way of formalizing the concept of effective computability. And this lambda calculus is kind of assembly language for the functional programming languages. The functional programming languages have the basic motivation of converting the mathematical functions into programming. So this lambda calculus usually whatever the mathematical functions that we will write is in general will be used as a minimum or we can say as a smallest universal program language for the world. So basically this lambda calculus is a universal model of computation which is just like equivalent to the Turing machine. So Turing machine is considered as the general purpose computer. So like that lambda calculus also. So in general, functional programming language can also be viewed as a variant of the lambda calculus. The FPLs such as Lisp, Scheme, FP, ML, Haskell are an attempt to realize the Church's lambda calculus in practical practical form as programming language. That means the mathematical models that are there, mathematical functions, they are trying to imitate or trying to simulate these particular mathematical functions via functional programming languages. Basically, these lambda expressions are, we have seen while discussing the FPLs, lambda functions are the nameless functions. So these lambda expressions consisting of variables, abstraction symbols such as lambda and dot, parenthesis. So these are the three most commonly identified expressions in the lambda calculus. So variable is an identifier which can be any of the letter which was written in the small letters like A, B, C, etc. So the general syntax of the lambda calculus will be like this. Beck's norm form, if you want to represent in Beck's norm form, recall the T1 syllabus in which we have seen the Beck's norm form. Beck's norm form is the pure way of writing the grammar. So here variable is equal to a single variable or variable, maybe variables, any number of variables. Lambda term in the sense variable or lambda term followed by lambda term or lambda variable followed by lambda term. So this is the way how we will define this lambda calculus in the Beck's norm form. The syntax will be written like this. A set of lambda terms is built up from an infinite set of variables. V is equal to V, V dash, V double dash, etc. Then x maybe belongs to V, m comma n maybe belongs to lambda. That may be a kind of providing an application like m into n kind of thing, which is also again belongs to lambda. M belongs to lambda and x maybe belongs to V, but lambda function lambda x of m will also belongs to lambda. So lambda x in the sense here it's a function which is taking the m as the parameter. That is what the meaning here. Rule 2 are known as application. This is the second one. This is said to be application. That means you are applying this m and n values which are belong to lambda term. And rule 3 is known as are known as the abstraction. Abstraction means here a function type. So this is the way how the syntax of lambda calculus will be written. Functions in the lambda calculus are written like this. Function in lambda calculus focus on the rule for going from an argument to the result. Ignore the issues of naming the function and its domain and range, because lambda functions itself are the nameless functions. Mathematical functions, for all x belongs to A, f of x is equal to x. It is represented in lambda calculus like this. Lambda x, that means here f is a nameless function, lambda x, which is giving the output as x. So sorry, previously I told you here this is f of x is equal to m. That means that here x is a function which is taking x as the argument and giving you result as m. That is what the meaning. Previously I told you that lambda of x, this is a function which is taking m as the parameter. No. This is lambda x which is giving you output as m. So argument is called x, the output of the function is x. So here lambda of x means this is f of x which is giving you the output as x. This is what the meaning of this lambda function. Next, a set of free variables m denoted by fv of m. Free variables means that are not bounded to any abstraction, means any function. Such kind of things are said to be free variables. Variables that fall within the scope of an abstraction are said to be bound, which are called bounded variables. Remaining all other variables are called free variables. This is the way of representation. So to explore more about the lambda calculus, anyhow you should have a knowledge on lambda calculus. That means there is a concept like lambda calculus. It will be used for the modeling the mathematical functions, and lambda functions are nameless functions, and how these variables and abstraction and applications are going to be binded. So these are the basic things that we must aware of. To explore more things about the lambda calculus, go to Wikipedia of lambda calculus. You will find sufficient information about the lambda calculus. Only thing is how to convert the, you go through the how to convert the normal functions into the lambda functions. Square underscore sum of x comma y is equal to x square plus y square. So it is simply remodeled as x comma y because it is an application, which is giving you x square plus y square, and this entire tuple is mapped to x square plus y square. Similarly, read as tuple of x and y is mapped to x square plus y square. So this is the way how this function is converted into the anonymous form, because lambda functions are nameless functions. Then how lambda calculus is going to be used or written like this. Anyhow, this particular concept is for your awareness. That is, you must know as a computer science student, okay, there exists a formal language like this, or formal representation of the mathematical functions like this. So I am leaving till this lambda functions. So we have covered the T3 part, that is concurrent programming, subprogram level concurrency, semaphore, monitors, message passing, statement level concurrency, Java threads, concurrency in C++ and Python. Next is functional programming. We have seen scheme programming and basics of function programming languages. Logic programming, logic and horn clauses, logic programming in Prolog, some Prolog examples also we have seen. Next is program correctness, axiomatic semantics, correctness of the object-oriented programs, in which we have seen the JML specification, correctness of the functional programming, formal methods and tools. In this we have also seen the lambda calculus kind of concept. So this is what the syllabus that we are supposed to cover. So in functional programming, this lambda calculus, this kind of things we have covered here. So all put together, today is the 43rd lecture, 42nd or 43rd lecture. So this is the 43rd lecture. So with this our syllabus has been completed. Now it is your task to go through this T3 syllabus. This is the end of the course, Theory of Programming Languages, and we'll meet in any of the upcoming courses.